Super Street Fighter IV Arcade Edition. Super Street Fighter IV Arcade Edition was Capcom fine-tuning a game that had already revived the fighter genre. Released in 2011, this edition introduced 4 new fighters: the fast-paced twins Yun and Yang, a darker take on Ryu as Evil Ryu, and the brutal Oni. But the real magic wasn't just new characters, it was the rebalance. Every move, combo strength, and special was adjusted to make the competitive scene better and more unpredictable. For casual fans, it kept all the flash and fun, over-the-top ultras, vibrant visuals, and arcade-perfect gameplay. But for serious players, it was a laboratory of skill. Online play on the PS3 meant endless lobbies where you could test yourself against strangers across the globe, while tournaments used this edition as their gold standard. The PS3's strong online infrastructure for fighters made it the platform of choice for many pros. It cemented Street Fighter as not just a nostalgic throwback, but as a modern esport. This was like a game of chess at 60 frames per second. Even years later, Arcade Edition remains remembered as one of the cleanest, most balanced entries in the series. Persona 5. By the time Persona 5 hit the PlayStation 3 in 2016, most players were already preparing for the next console generation, but Atlus wasn't done yet. The game blended turn-based combat with a stylish Tokyo backdrop, a rebellious Phantom Thief storyline, and some of the slickest art direction the genre had ever seen. Even on the aging PS3 hardware, the presentation was stunning. Menus popped with comic book flair, character animations shined with personality, and the soundtrack gave every battle its own rhythm. Gameplay-wise, it refined everything from Persona 3 and Persona 4, letting players balance dungeon crawling with high school life. You were managing friendships, building social links, and making choices that shaped your relationships and abilities. Thematically, it struck a chord by focusing on corrupt authority figures and the desire for youth-driven rebellion. For PS3 owners, it was the perfect game, one that stretched the console to its artistic limits while giving fans a 100-hour adventure that never felt too much. Red Dead Redemption. In 2010, Rockstar took its open-world formula out of the city and into the Wild West with Red Dead Redemption, and the result was nothing short of revolutionary. Playing as former outlaw John Marston, you were dropped into a massive frontier filled with dusty towns, roaming bandits, lawmen, and wildlife that behaved as if it had its own ecosystem. For PS3 players, it was unlike anything else. The sheer scale and detail of the world made it feel alive in a way few games had achieved. The narrative was just as impactful. Marston struggled to reconcile his past while being forced into service by the government was equal parts tragic and compelling. Missions ranged from classic shootouts to train robberies and cattle herding, but it was often the quiet moments, like watching the sun set across the plains, or hearing Jose Gonzalez's Far Away kick in during a ride to Mexico, that cemented the game as unforgettable. Online multiplayer extended the experience, letting players form alliances, duel in showdowns, or simply explore across the frontier together. For the PS3 era, it pushed boundaries of immersion and storytelling further than you could imagine. What's your favorite PlayStation game of all time? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe while you're down there too. BioShock. When BioShock arrived on the PlayStation 3 in 2008, it had an amazing atmosphere. Set in the underwater city of Rapture, players descended into a crumbling utopia gone wrong. The blend of eerie storytelling, survival horror tension, and first-person combat made it a game that stuck with you long after you put down the controller. At its core, BioShock asked deeper questions than most games of its time. Would you harvest or save the Little Sisters? How much control did you actually have over your choices? The now iconic Would You Kindly twist redefined what a narrative in video games could be, pulling players into a meta commentary about free will inside the medium itself. On the PS3, the game came with improved visuals, challenge rooms, and all the weight of its haunting world intact. Combat let you mix traditional weapons with plasmid powers, shooting lightning into water to electrocute enemies, or freezing foes solid before shattering them with a wrench. It was creative, violent, and deeply immersive. For many, BioShock was one of the best games on the PS3. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. If the first Uncharted was a promising debut, Uncharted 2 Among Thieves was the moment Naughty Dog planted its flag. Released in 2009, it pushed the PlayStation 3 to its limits, combining cinematic storytelling with jaw-dropping set pieces that felt straight out of an action blockbuster. The opening alone, Nathan Drake dangling from a derailed train hanging off a cliff, set the tone for a game that never let up. The pacing was masterful. One moment you were scaling icy mountains, the next you were sprinting across collapsing buildings in Nepal, all while trading witty banter with Sully, Alana, and Chloe. The gunplay and platforming were tighter than the first game, but what really stood out was how seamlessly combat, puzzles, and story blended together. Visually, it was a showcase for the PS3's power. The environments were lush and detailed in ways that rivaled films of the era. Add in a multiplayer mode that became a sleeper hit, and you had a package that defined what the PS3 was capable of. Simply put, Uncharted 2 was the game that made players say, "This is why you own a PlayStation 3." Mass Effect 2. When Mass Effect 2 finally arrived on the PlayStation 3 in 2011, it was the definitive way to experience one of the greatest RPGs ever made. BioWare bundled in an interactive digital comic that recapped the first game's choices, letting PS3 players make key decisions before diving into Commander Shepard's first dangerous mission yet. What followed was a masterclass in player-driven storytelling. Tasked with assembling a crew for a mission against the mysterious collectors, every decision mattered. Would your team be loyal enough to survive? Would your choices doom characters you'd grown attached to? The tension of knowing anyone could be taken out made the stakes feel brutally real. Combat was sharper and faster than the first game, mixing squad tactics with tight third-person shooting. And the PS3 version ran on the updated Unreal Engine, giving it visual polish and smoother performance that rivaled any contemporary release. The writing cemented the cast as some of the most beloved characters in gaming. For RPG fans on PS3, Mass Effect 2 was proof that player choice could shape stories in ways no other medium could match. Portal 2. When Portal 2 hit the PS3 in 2011, it proved that puzzle games could be just as gripping as any best-selling combat game. Building on the cult classic original, Valve expanded the concept on using a portal gun to solve environmental puzzles into a full-fledged adventure. The story once again put you in the shoes of Chell, navigating the decaying science facility while the snarky AI GLaDOS provided razor-sharp commentary. But this time, you weren't alone. Enter Wheatley, the bumbling personality core voiced brilliantly by Stephen Merchant. His comedic timing added layers to the game's darker undertones, and his eventual heel turn gave the narrative surprising weight. The puzzles themselves escalated beautifully, starting with simple portal placement before evolving into gravity-defying chambers using light bridges, excursion funnels, and gels that changed movement and physics entirely. On the PS3, Portal 2 also offered something revolutionary: cross-platform play with PC users through Steam integration, a rare feature at the time. The co-op campaign, starring two test robots named Atlas and Peabody, was just as polished as the single-player story, demanding genuine teamwork to solve its mind-bending levels. Portal 2 was a witty, inventive, and unforgettable experience that proved intelligence could be as thrilling as firepower. Grand Theft Auto V. By the time Grand Theft Auto V landed on the PlayStation 3 in 2013, Rockstar had already built a reputation for pushing open-world gaming to new heights. But GTA V was a different beast. It redefined what open-world even meant. For the first time, players could switch seamlessly between three protagonists: Michael, a retired bank robber; Franklin, a young hustler; and Trevor, a chaotic wildcard who became instantly infamous. This structure allowed for a dynamic narrative that kept shifting perspectives, weaving personal struggles with high-stakes heists. Los Santos itself was the star of the show. The city felt alive, from traffic jams and beachgoers to the desert outskirts filled with wildlife and biker gangs. It was the most detailed world Rockstar had ever created, and it ran impressively on the aging PS3 hardware. The variety was staggering. You could play tennis, trade stocks, or just cause mayhem for hours without touching the main missions. Then came GTA Online, a massive multiplayer playground that launched alongside the single-player game. It exploded into one of the most profitable and enduring online experiences in gaming history. For PS3 players, GTA V was an entire world waiting to be lived in. Dark Souls. From Software built on the foundation of Demon's Souls and created a game that redefined difficulty, exploration, and discovery. Players were dropped into the unforgiving kingdom of Lordaeron, with almost no direction, forced to learn enemy patterns, master stamina management, and accept that death was part of the journey. What set Dark Souls apart was the sense of mystery. The game never held your hand. Every shortcut unlocked, every hidden path discovered, felt like a personal triumph. Its interconnected world design was genius. Areas looped back into each other in ways that constantly surprised players, making exploration deeply rewarding. The lore was equally captivating. Told through cryptic item descriptions and environmental storytelling, it built a world of fallen gods, cursed knights, and decaying kingdoms that players pieced together like archaeologists. And then there were the bosses, towering monstrosities like Ornstein and Smough or the Abyss Watchers that tested patience, skill, and determination. Dark Souls was a rite of passage. It was about surviving, learning from every failure, and eventually achieving the kind of victory that felt genuinely earned. The Last of Us. In 2013, Naughty Dog delivered what many still call the pinnacle of the PlayStation 3 era, The Last of Us. This was an emotional gut punch that showed how deeply video games could tell stories. Set in a post-apocalyptic America ravaged by a fungal infection, you followed Joel, a hardened smuggler, and Ellie, a teenager immune to the outbreak. What started as a job to escort her across the country evolved into one of the most powerful character relationships in gaming history. The gameplay balanced tense stealth, brutal combat, and limited resources, forcing players to think through every encounter. But what truly set it apart was the writing. The dialogue felt raw and human, and the performances from Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson gave Joel and Ellie a depth rarely seen in the medium. Visually, it pushed the PS3 to its breaking point. From overgrown cityscapes to dimly lit interiors, the environments were hauntingly detailed. And then came the ending, an unforgettable moral dilemma that left players debating for years. The Last of Us was a masterpiece that closed out the generation with one of the most impactful stories ever told. Thanks for watching.